One Saturday evening, 3 boys were arrested after an elderly person had seen them enter an abandoned electric power station. According to the 3 boys, Jan V, Kyle F, and Lucius N, there was a 4th boy in the group, but their friend, Mark K, must have gotten lost within the power station. They told the officer that before they lost their friend Mark, he had mentioned seeing a girl in a yellow hood as well in there. After the police investigated the place, they found the gruesome mutilated body of Mark.
"He died of blood loss due to his throat being cut open,"
said one officer.
"Pieces of his skin were missing, also one eye."
Police didn't find any clues that could show who actually committed the murder. The 3 teenagers were the top suspects. Four hooded teenage boys met in front of an old abandoned power station. They had agreed to meet there a day before because one of the boys, whose name was Lucius, wanted to explore it. Tough for their age, they weren't really afraid of the idea. "We should totally check this place out. Maybe it's haunted," Lucius had exclaimed. "Everything that's abandoned is haunted to you," said Mark, rolling his eyes at the other's remark. "So your head is haunted too, Marky?" He was sniggering while Mark was punching his shoulder. The 4 teens had entered the decrepit building through a somewhat concealed crack in the wall Lucius had found days ago. Each of them was ignoring the sign that read, "Warning, do not enter, hazardous area." The place smelled slightly metallic beneath the scent of dust. The walls were dirty, and bits were peeling from damage done by rust and rain. They could barely see the rats running around, for the power station had no windows. It was pitch black, within a foot of their faces. Only the cracks in the walls and ceiling let some light inside. The boys found themselves more than glad that they had at least their phones, which produced enough light for sight with them. Absorbed in their wandering around and looking at things, the boys came to a room with an electric reactor. The machinery was lying in a puddle of water on the ground that had formed because of the rain the previous day. As one of the boys was about to step into the room where the murky, brown water pooled, Mark grabbed him by the arm, pulling him back. "Are you stupid? That thing might still work. Don't you know that electric current flows through water?" "Sorry, I forgot that, dude." Kyle rubbed the back of his head awkwardly, looking at his companions. As he did, Lucius peered behind him into the room again curiously. "I think we should leave now. If someone knows that we've been here, we could get in big trouble." His sentence was cut short by Mark's shrill scream. He and the other 2 boys shook as Jan covered Mark's mouth. "What the fuck, dude? Do you want someone to hear us?" he whispered aggressively, slowly uncovering the terrified boy's mouth. Mark's eyes were wide with fear, his face pale. I saw a girl in a yellow hooded jacket with something in her mouth." Jan and Kyle paused before laughing at the statement. "Very funny, Mark. Stop screwing around, you idiot." Lucius started to lead the boys out of the creepy and abandoned place. He was obviously unnerved by what his friend had said. Mark shook his head, thinking that it might have been his wild imagination, and started to follow his friends, all the while looking down. As he walked, he noticed that his shoelaces were untied. "Guys, wait, I need to tie my shoes." He kneeled and did so, but as he stood up again, his friends had vanished into the darkness. They probably hadn't heard him as he told them to wait. Afraid and alone, Mark tried to find the way out. Walking past the room with the rusted reactor, however, he stopped in front of the door as he saw something move in the corner of his eye. He slowly turned his head and stood, frozen, as the light from his phone screen illuminated the figure. Before him, he saw a tall girl facing the corner of the room. She wore a yellow jacket with the hood pulled up. Assuming she may be lost like himself, he let out a shaky, "Hello?" and slowly heard the strange girl whisper,
"Help me."
As the girl turned to him, her head down, he asked her with unease, How can I help you?" Though her head was down, she was facing his direction. Even with her eyes and mouth closed, he noticed the dried blood on her cheeks. It looked as if it had come from her eyes. "Are you all right?" he questioned loudly, worried for her. Mark only heard a loud,
"No."
from the girl. Though he swore he heard her speak, she didn't open her mouth. Suddenly, she opened her eyes only to reveal empty sockets. The young boy was highly apprehensive as the girl opened her mouth slowly. Inside was a large grayish blue eye that was glistening as it looked directly at Mark. She raised her hands in Mark's direction and, without moving her body, slid quickly towards him. He screamed loudly, running out of reach just before she could get him. Feeling afraid for his life, he accidentally lost his phone as he was running in panic. He found himself unable to see anything, groping with his hands around in front of him as he was walking forward. It had already gotten dark outside as the sun had set, so the usual light that came from the wall cracks wasn't there to aid him anymore. Mark stumbled as his foot bumped into something, scooting it across the floor. A surge of hope arose in him as he saw his phone illuminating a few feet away from him on the filthy floor of the plant. He realized that it must have been what he had kicked and ran as fast as possible towards it, scooped it up. Feeling much more confident, he held up his makeshift flashlight. His heart nearly stopped as he saw the same girl from earlier. She was right in front of him, the singular eye from her mouth peering towards his face. Before he could turn around to run, she grabbed Mark's arm. The eye within her mouth twitched before it slowly split 4 ways. With a horrified expression painted on his face, Mark saw several sharp teeth emerge from within the eye. As he screamed in terror, the eye stretched out from within the girl's mouth and latched onto his face, digging its teeth deep into his flesh. Warm blood started to rush down Mark's face as his muffled screams got louder. The awful pain added to his desperate calls for help. The eye slowly peeled the skin off of his face as it released him. The blood was splattering onto the walls as it tossed the flesh aside, and the boy's body fell to the ground. The eye clung once more onto the boy's head, sticking out his eyes with its teeth, chewing his flesh and swallowing the mush. When it finished, it retracted once more before it bit harshly into Mark's neck, ripping an artery out of the boy's throat, and it let him bleed out. As the boy took his last breath and died, the eye unlatched from Mark's throat, closed itself, and retreated back into the ghost girl's mouth. By the time his friends came looking for him the next day, the girl had disappeared.